We're live.
Hey.
Hello, everyone. This is the first time I'm here with Ken Lineweber on the piano. Ken is my father-in-law.
Hello there.
We've only had guests once live, and right now I'm sitting behind here with Ken. Yeah, let's take an hour to talk about all things, not just accordion, but blues, boogie woogie, all the things that we learned last month on Accordion Love. Ken, you've been playing the piano and blues and boogie woogie and all those styles for probably over 5 years.
Somebody said, and it probably was out of Chicago, the blues had a baby, and the baby was rock and roll. So we'll put a bit of rock and roll in here too, because that was my first feeling.
You started with rock and roll and then you went back to like the origin.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. So we'll do some songs, we'll do some... I'd like to understand what's happening. It's magic what happens. I like to reveal the magic. I'm gonna mute mine and Ken's microphones while Ken is playing to get rid of the echo. We'll start an overhead cam. We'll start an overhead cam, which is this one, so you can watch Ken's fingers, and let's enjoy the show.
Wake-up call.
I love it. That was beautiful. Can I ask you questions?
Sure, please.
That was amazing. That was beautiful. I hope folks can hear us. They said that piano playing was great. All ears and loving from the UK. Hello people. Hello Evo. Hello Valerie. Hello Wendy. Hello CTV, who's only here to stay for 20 minutes. John Goodwin from the UK. Lovely. So Ken, I know there's 12-bar blues, right? Like C. Ken's playing blues in the key of C. You're doing so much. The left hand, you were doing a 12-bar blues, but then you included some other keys as well. Do you not always stick to the CFG pattern?
Two hands. We have left and a right. The bass is one of the bigger things. When I played in bands, I actually didn't want to have a bass player there. There was too much fighting that would go on, conflict. Just a bit about the left hand. And I'm sure accordion players, the left hand's an interesting one because you've got mainly chords, I think.
But we can still do...
Right. So there is the simple thing to play. The first thing you ever learn is... Is that
bass
kind
tone,
of,
bass
yes,
tone,
yes.
root, chord. Yep, we do that.
Then there's single things, and that what I was doing originally when we started was a walking bass.
Which the upright bass player would traditionally do.
Then just the odd chord here.
Comping.
there's
And is this on autopilot? Are you thinking about this? Your left hand?
in the beginning, yes. But now it's what you're looking for is it's a 4-letter word. It begins with F, ends in L. Feel. Feel is what you want. That was one way of doing it. Another way is
Cool. Yeah. And can I pause there for a minute? I hate pausing people
No
in the middle
problem.
of a thing. What you were doing there, so the feel of it is almost as important as the notes that you play. And what you
Precisely.
were doing there, the overhead cam is on. You were using just 2 notes, the G and the B flat
in the key of C.
in the key of C, but you held those on over the F chord
Yes.
too.
Well, simply what I'm going to do here is I'll do a C, and then I'll do an F and a G, and I will hold this. I think it might sound better here. I will do a rocking back and forth.
And you resolve it because there's tension between the natural B when you're playing G and the B flat, but like how come you're playing it up there? Does it?
Well, you can play it. Actually, you learn after a while, or you figure out after a while, at least on the piano, well, on any instrument.
Yeah,
but
we have octaves too. Yeah.
Or you,
Yeah. It rocks nicer there. Bram, bram, bram. Repetition, eh?
so you can do the same thing all through a deal. If you get it really going, the audience will really get going. They'll start clapping, actually, possibly, and it's a technique to use.
I have so many questions. Do you want to play a song and I'll ask you? I have so many questions about whether you've played those riffs before. Is it all improvised? Are you feeling it? And that's how you're figuring out what to repeat? Like that do 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 do.
Let's take a song out of the hymnary,
I'll mute our mics and you go and play.
and I'll change it as we go along, or I'll try to anyways. that was in the key of D. In the key of C, what if... That's about all the songs I know.
Those three. Yeah. I want to say thank you for keeping it. Oh, so you said you started with rock and roll, and obviously, and then went back to the blues. And You Are My Sunshine, you bluesified it.
Yes, a little bit, yeah.
And do you find that happens with other things? Like, do you inject that blues feel and those rhythms into? Do you find that it crawls into songs that aren't necessarily blues from the beginning?
Yes. You can do children's songs. Old MacDonald Had a Farm, E-I-E-I-O. And you can do it for kids, and you can probably also do it for adults, or make it a bit musically darker.
Yeah. It's also playful, though, right?
Yes, playful. Yeah, play. Feeling, part of feeling is playing.
And I noticed sitting here, there were some interesting keys in the first song, and I looked over at you and you kind of did the eye like, how do you deal with unintentional notes, mistakes as people call
mistakes,
them, but those were like interesting notes. Mistake is a weird word.
It does provide a moment where you can take off to somewhere else.
Yeah. But you felt those, right? That was that intentional? Was that a surprise?
Somehow the fingers got just a bit off.
Yeah.
I quickly adjusted,
Yeah.
and we got back on track.
But it was interesting,
It
right?
happens. Yes, it was.
Yeah. And how do you feel now about those unintentional notes versus earlier when you were playing? Meaning, I remember making mistakes and shaking my head no. These days when I make mistakes, I'll smile and kind of laugh. Like, that was interesting.
Yes,
How has your perception of mistakes changed?
I used to grunt when I'd make
Really?
Yeah, I'd be a little...
Angry at yourself.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you start playing with your eyes closed, and it really feels good. And then you wake up, your eyes open up, and you're somewhere else.
I'll read some comments just to say hi from people. I said I would read out loud. Hello from Kristen. Hello from my mom in Toronto. Hello from Joanne. She says, I'm lucky enough to have personal concert from this gentleman every day for the past 50 years.
So
and it's
nice.
True. Stephanie says, hello from Seattle. Wonderful blues playing. Betna from Germany. Hello. Amazing. Lots of thumbs up. 9 p.m. is a great time watching the live stream here in Europe. Work is finished. Blues and this kind of music is good anytime. Stephanie, I love hearing the rhythm of You Are My Sunshine with blues voicings and riffs. Right? Could you jazz up Test Drive from How You Train Your Dragon? I don't know if Ken knows that. But the idea is, could you, I guess that question, what makes a song jazzy upable? Could you jazz up Bach? What do you look for to jazz up a song?
There's a French fellow, and I can't recall his name at this moment. Jacques Lussier.
We played it in the car on the ride home once.
Bach, with the jazz feel.
Yes.
And incredible. He's one of the few people, incredible technique. There's always this big deal and I wrote it down for something to remember, is the feel, play to a song with feeling. And one of the things that you have to watch out for is too much technique and training can stifle your playing.
Too much technique and playing can stifle your playing. That's a huge thing.
But the Jacques Lussier, in this particular Bach, the jazz that he does, with I believe a bass player and a drummer, he does it really well, and it's very relaxing. And yes, it can be done, and his technique is magnificent. It doesn't get in the way of it at all.
You know what it reminds me of? I remember watching figure skating, and some figure skaters or dancers, it's perfectly technical, and they get a check mark,
Yep.
but there's a score, now that we're scoring music, about feel and creativity. And so I sometimes enjoy watching the technical skating or playing, but the thing that moves me, the thing that gets the audience clapping, are the skaters, the dancers, the musicians that do it with feeling. Right?
Yes, but there's yeah.
And I think that's why we're attracted to the blues, right? It makes us feel something.
Late 50s probably, but it's a nice song.
And to get technical here, you were playing a cool voicing on the right hand. Both hands were doing ta 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 ta, but here you were doing the do do da da. Can you do that? Yes. This center, we're hearing the C D.
So I was at the 5, the C.
What about the vamp? And keep going. Yes.
Surge.
Yes, thirds. Beautiful harmony.
B flat.
Yes.
Back to F.
I love it. How do you choose when to do hits versus runs of notes? How do you develop your feel?
Well, it's an introduction to a song. I'm not sure who did it, but it's usually on guitar that they will do it. But has to be said, these instruments, they're good for lots of stuff, but they're not too good for letting it rip.
Yeah.
A real piano is what you need.
I like the fact that you used the word real piano. There's a big switch to digital, which is fine. Lots of advantages.
Definitely.
But a real piano, real accordion, acoustic guitars, acoustic drums. What's the feel? What are you lacking? Can you name it? Or is it that 4-letter F word?
Well, you could probably, on a real piano, you get more of the bass sounding kind of raw.
Yeah.
It's a raw sound you want to try and get. They don't design these for raw.
Yeah.
I could put it that way.
It's a precision digital instrument.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, there's nothing as cool as this, for example. But anyways, it's I don't think you can't play these instruments sloppily.
Yeah, they're too precise. It's a precision instrument.
Whereas on a piano, you can learn to be sloppy, but it's the beautiful part of being sloppy. And it's a nice way to. And it's very hard. That little thing on a piano with so much raw.
Yeah, and it reminds me, when you're doing the two notes, despite your fingers having the subtlest touch, this isn't able to pick up on the subtleties. So it's sounding similar when really in a manual instrument, it would be so different. Each one of those key presses would have the hammer. You'd be able to feel that.
Right, yeah.
Cool. And when you learned, did you use backing tracks? How do you practice? Both now after a lifetime of playing and when you were 27.
When I was 27, I was working. I was not a musician.
Oh, really? You played music,
at that time, I played music. But I decided I wanted. What I did was I listened to all the records of all the piano players in the 20s and 30s, the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s, and some of the ones in the 50s, and learned their style, or not listen to their style, but desperately wanted to be myself. And that's a very important thing when you're being creative or you dare to touch on that turf. You want to be yourself. So when you play, you want to be yours. And it's very important to be yourself. We do a lot of stealing.
Yeah.
But but you want to, you have to make it your own. You don't want to do this particular configuration. I just came across a couple of months ago.
And your fingers are already in that configuration. Yeah.
And I realized that it was from a blues guy, and I can't. The name has slipped me at this point. But it was one of his deal, but Scotland Boogie, I think it's called, and it was.
And can you explain what's interesting about these? Because this is a really interesting note combination, that E and E flat, the 3 and the flat 3. How come it works?
You wouldn't think that, for example, if we hit here, and then we hit here, and then we do both together.
Yeah, heebie-jeebies.
Heebie-jeebies. Well, what's interesting with this particular chord is that, which I discovered, so to speak, is when you're playing scales, things happen. That you've got this, you got an E here, and you got a
Flat third, yeah.
there's that tension. But you add a B flat, and then you say you're in the key of C.
It's satisfying.
So you got a little a bottom for a song. So there's your imagination going. You just add a little thing. This is a good one too. This is in the key of is flatted 7th with an E, and only those, and it's the key of C, then F, G, lots of possibilities. But the left hand, getting back to that, that's the rhythm. And this is kind of a little fill up here. Mm-hmm. It doesn't hurt to double up, so to speak.
And eventually your right hand will take over and start playing lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. So many things. Do you have, I guess, a toolkit of like a bag of things that you could pull out? I realized that during that Boogie Woogie, you did you mentioned the song that you did 2 times ago, the in C though, like the with the not that low.
You have an assortment of things you can play beyond the simple the chords.
And how did you discover these riffs? So you said listening and imitating a bit, which we do in language, we do it with dancing and baking, and eventually we discover ourselves. But in terms of practice, do you do scales? Do you do triads and arpeggios? Chords voicings?
You can't mess with arpeggios. Somebody said they're pretty big.
Literally, it can span 2 octaves. Whether it's Ave Maria or Moonlight Sonata, it's all arpeggios.
It's all arpeggios. And then you find, after you've done it a couple hundred times, and it bores you a little bit, you come to the come to here and you think, well, what should I go to? Well, let's try E. Oh, guess what? It works. What do you do next? You resolve it back to where you started.
Wow, I wouldn't think those would work. The E major from the A flat has no connection, but it's like a happy surprise.
And I know the theorists will have a phrase and a word for all that. But when you discover it yourself, it's like, oh, that's an interesting thing to do.
How do you give yourself that permission to discover it and not say, oh, I'm wrong, right? When does that happen?
Because practicing, while necessary, can be really boring.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to really dig in, and you have to keep doing it. Because something happens where the hand goes somewhere, something happens, or you read a book about something and it talks about something or other, and away you go. This one comes out of somebody from the 30s or the 40s or the 20s. This
Older blues.
Once again, this piano isn't too friendly for doing that, but a real piano is. Yeah.
And do you have something to say about like speed versus feel? Do you have a preference for what you just did there?
Speed will come. Play it as it feels comfortable to you. Keep repeating it, and eventually you'll find all the speed you'll ever need. And sometimes a lot of speed is just for one thing, that show. And
Yeah. Kind of like okay
maybe when you're younger you play for show, but
yeah.
hopefully you get smarter.
The thing you said before about discovering yourself, your own voice, I feel as kids we imitate. We say what maybe as kids we're original, but we read and we say speeches and we read what's written. But the hope, I think, is, like you said, to find our own voice, whether on the piano, whether in life and ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And that involves listening, reading, imitating other people, not stealing. But the hope is, after all that practice, we start to feel comfortable with our own expression. And that comes from time, sitting down, being comfortable.
Yeah. I remember in the 1950s, when I would have been 14 years of age, I grew up with a fellow who had a couple of brothers who were older than us, and they all were into music. And in the 50s, in jazz, there was a chord, and this was big time in the 50s.
Major 7? Look at me.
big.
Yeah, it reminds me of Misty. I mean, it's
Yes,
so
yes,
many
yeah,
songs.
yeah, yeah. So many songs.
Sydney was asking, great music. What are the basic chords he's playing? Yeah, do you have go-to chords in the key of C, let's say? What are your go-to
Always,
when you...
so you can think of chords as numbers. So if we're in the key of C, we'll say C is number 1. And most songs, or a lot of songs, particularly songs today, probably have three chords. And in country music, they say 3 chords and the truth. And that's 1, 4, and 5. So C, 4 up, if you understand a little bit about all of that, is F, and then there's the G, but the G has to be. We start with peace.
Happy.
And there's a little bit of tension, not much. Then we go to the G7, and we feel we're being pushed.
I'm teetering. It's not solid anymore.
Let's resolve. Back to C. F, a little bit of tension. G, a little bit more. A little bit more. Oh, what happened
What
there?
was that?
And then you find yourself, oh, I got to go to, if I've gone to E, I've got to go to A minor.
Oh, that resolution.
And then
the delayed gratification there. You gave us the B without, yeah. And how do you?
3-letter word, fun. Try and have fun with the feeling that you can do. That's not always easy, but.
Were you taught this way? It feels like when I was taught, there are different ways of teaching, but it felt like I didn't understand this about music. It was more do as I do the triads, scales, and arpeggios without the background information of feel the tension and let's resolve it. That's the 5 to the 1.
None of that was ever. You come across that as you experience the music over decades or over time, through process of being around it. There was a time in the 70s, the early 70s. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, which it is. It's still happening. There was a music that they tried to make popular, and I kind of liked it because it was called No Tension.
I'm thinking of Eric Satie.
Yeah.
Elevator music.
Yeah, no tension. And that's very hard to do, no tension, because you do change chords, and these instruments are really good. That's one thing they're really good for, is that kind of ambience, that kind of synthetic.
If we go to 1, 2, I mean, this is just a beautiful electric piano. It lets you breathe. Those chord changes, it's both you really got me.
Yes, that's right. It's also.
Yeah, that's going down 1.
Yeah, and they both actually came out around within earshot of each other in terms of time, because remember, steal what you can.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost, is it? No, it's. I was thinking of Riders on the Storm.
Yeah, that's right.
Minor, but similar kind of. I mean, Ray Manzarek, a whole other being.
He
who
was,
also did Left Hand with.
There was a magazine called Playboy. Ray Manzarek was the jazz pianist
for the Doors. Yeah.
for the Doors, but he also won the Jazz Piano Award for the Playboy magazine.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh no, he had very, very good.
I can put you back to
Plus,
piano.
they had James Morrison.
Yeah, yeah. Can you, what about blues in a minor key? We've been playing boogie woogie and blues in major keys. Do you ever play in minor key as well? Ooh.
Coming in here.
And that's okay. I was gonna say, sometimes I really don't like sometimes when people ask me to play something and I'm just like, I'm really not feeling it, right? Going back to that 4-letter F word, feel. Can I point something out? Sorry,
Sure.
you were gonna say something.
No.
There was, if this was like a Disney movie, there would be like Tinkerbell flying around, and it seemed like you were noodling around and not really feeling it. And then there was like a spark of something, and you got into a groove, and it clicked.
Yeah.
Right?
And the instrument defeated me because I wanted to. My hand won't do it today for some reason.
But I guess as a parent, well, I guess what's the lesson here? It was interesting because we'd done this chunk of work. You had played this chunk of major and boogie, and all of a sudden it's like, can you play minor? And it's like you had to take a minute to get into the feel of it. And I want to say that Ken's been improvising this whole time. These aren't, except for "You Are My Sunshine" as the second song, you are feeling all of this, right? What feels good? How do I go into this groove? And this is like what I did there was asking you, we've been playing with a triangle, and all of a sudden here's a square. Can you fit it into this triangular hole? And you had to mess around with it, right? And now we're in a minor mood. What does that feel like, as I guess, for you as a player? How did you get into that minor? What did it feel like? What changed? Or is it just not being felt
Well,
now?
if we start with major,
Ooh, yeah. It's a lighter playing too.
so you just little snippets that you come up with and try and make it work. Work into something. One of the nice things is of what accordion can do and what pianos can do is they're like a composer's dream, because you can have your birds up here, you know, tweeting, and a bit of, that's not a bird.
No, that's an elephant's foot.
That's not a bird.
Yeah. Polyphonic instruments like accordion, piano.
You know, leaves, birds, you know, your imagination, you make up the animals in your head. And there's that dark something on
Yeah.
the enter stage left. Yeah.
And do you think that way when you play music? Or
Yes, yes.
What's in your head?
One of my, when I was 3 and 4, whatever, I can still recall we had a piano at home, and we lived in a small town. And every Saturday afternoon, from the Metropolitan Opera out of New York City, came the Metropolitan Opera on the air. And they had Rudolph, a guy named Rudolph Bing. I still remember, he's long gone. But he was, hi, I'm Rudolph Bing, and we are doing Mozart today, whatever. And he would talk about it, and I would listen, and I didn't understand a damn thing. But then the music came on, and you hear voices singing, and there was music. And there was always this, once again, the bird. And it was telling a story. And so I would go to the piano, and I loved nothing better as a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 7-year-old before I started taking formal lessons was just going and, you know, just.
What's low?
And what you
what's
didn't
high?
realize was there are people who make a career out of doing this, just like this.
Yeah. It's a music to a sound. It's a soundtrack to pictures.
yes.
That's why movies work so well,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
these are
there's nothing
interstate
better
lines.
than having the screen of the movie, the cake, what do they call the end of the day, the
the
shot,
dailies.
the dailies, and putting the dailies up on the screen and sitting at a piano and watching everything and creating at the moment. There is a female composer out of England that's how she does it. And they asked her how she did it, and she's won a number of awards and everything. And it was, oh well, I just have a piano brought in, and they shoot the daily, so I don't have to show up on the scene for months until they're getting really close, and then I can just sit and play.
Cool.
And you wonder why they want to. It's hard to get funding in schools for music and the arts.
And the arts in general.
And the arts in general. That's always the first to go.
Yeah. Musicians are
Anyway.
hardworking people. Artists are hardworking
yes,
people.
Yes.
Man, oh man.
Getting through a rough patch.
I was going to say, the feeling of the minor was right there. It's like your fingers couldn't hit a wrong note. It was like you got into the feeling of it. And then you switched to a C major boogie. And I couldn't help but accompany you. Yeah.
Naturally.
People are saying lovely. People are saying, I love what Ken said about speed and showiness being for young people. I have to leave, but thank you so much for offering this. I learned a lot. John from the UK says 50s is my era. Thank you. The accordion is a generational instrument in my family. I want to learn to play, but I have no musical ear. But I can enjoy other people and hopefully pick something up. People say lovely. Hello, Wendy from Italy. When people... Have you taught people... what does it mean when, I guess, someone has no musical ear? What is it about... Yeah.
I've taught once. Well, I'm all for anytime anyone wants it, you got it. I'll give it to you. But there was a young guy, and I think he was about 9 years of age. And his parents wanted him to have piano lessons. And somehow I said yes. And somehow I said I wasn't going to... What I did was, I showed him how to be a rock and roll piano player. Nothing else. So I taught him. I taught him that, and he learned that. He was unable to read music, or there was something going on. But with his ear, and me showing him this, one of the school teachers where he went to school knew me and had played with me musically. And she came to me one day and said, you know, so-and-so, he's playing at noon hour on the school piano.
Wow.
And he sounds just like you. Well, yeah. the question had to do with people are apparently tone deaf or monotonal.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess there's so many different types of learners, and yeah, not sure of the psychology of
Well,
how we think of ourselves. And
When you think of not, there's an article in the Ladies Atlantic. What's his name? The Rolling Stones drummer, or no, the Beatles drummer, Ringo.
yeah,
Everybody thought he was about the worst drummer on the face of the planet. Guess what? It turns out he was the glue that kept the Beatles together. Not only with his drumming, which was very feeling orientated, was not technique oriented, but he provided the beat, and he had a way of thinking and delivering language that captivated the rest of the Beatles into writing songs. It was him. We only find that out now, after all the damage has been done. But interesting enough, yeah. I forget, there was one jazz drummer who was one of the big time guys. Said, well, what do you think of Ringo Starr's drumming? Oh, at best, he's not a good drummer.
yeah.
And it just turns out, no, that's not true.
Yeah, and we all have something different to offer. I played at this accordion festival this past weekend, and all the musicians there were, I call them professional musicians, technically sound, feeling sound, like just a level above. They're black belts.
Yeah.
And here I show up as a blue belt accordion player. I think I bring a lot of feel and energy, and so there's something to be said around, again, bringing feel to something, and that supports the group too, because I loved playing with them. I couldn't keep up during solos. While they could do 72 notes in 10 seconds, I could do 17 notes in 10 seconds.
Right.
We're not counting notes, but I felt like you find your space. So if someone is tone deaf, it may mean that you play a little bit differently, or you're not going to play by ear and really go by the notes. And that's okay. There are people who, I guess, play with your strength, but at the foundation of it, I know someone really intimately, really closely, who's an incredible business person, who cannot read well. And it hasn't stopped them from being incredibly successful in life. They've just shifted to their strengths. So that's that's one way to think about it. And obviously everyone's case is different. I can't read sheet music, so I'm not going to rely on that, but I'm thinking of chords and really feel. Intently listening. I'm motivated to learn, just haven't found my ability to do that yet. Thank you for responding. There are other skills that are used for you. So right, 100%. And learning comes eventually. I fell in love with the accordion based on the Amelie soundtrack, just like so many other accordion players. I feel like to come back to an instrument, there has to be a love. Yes, parents can force the children to do something, but to come back week after week, it's like you hearing those radio plays, the radio performances, that's what got you to the piano.
Well, my first piano teacher, when I was 7 or 8, when I started taking lessons, they had a little, the ruler. And you put the ruler, tap, tap.
Oh, no.
That only lasted one season, from September to March. Then the next one, who I got, she was wonderful. She said, the only thing about you is you play like an elephant.
What did that mean?
And guess what? Whatever it
Still
was,
do.
I loved it.
That's a compliment to you.
Yeah, exactly. To a 9, 10-year-old, yeah, you play like an elephant. Oh, that's kind of interesting.
I love that. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder what that means. I mean, we're taught classical repertoire, which has its benefits in certain things, but when did you make the switch to this rock and roll playing? When did you start playing music that you wanted to play?
I got into grade 5 Toronto Conservatory, which means, yes, I can read music.
You know the chords?
I know the chords. I know a lot of scales. And I was 14 years old, and my parents said, you can either carry on with piano or you can stop. Well, a 14-year-old boy most likely is going to say, I'll quit. And I did. And then I would come home from school and have milk and cookies. I was that fortunate. And I would listen to the radio. And there's a guy named Paul Anka. And he had a song called Oh Diana. And it was on the radio, and it was a big, big song at the time. And it was like, and I paid attention to it, and I had an aha moment. I realized that, I should be able to go to the piano and play that, or play along with it, be able to. And it was true, I could.
Cool.
I went there, and it was an E flat, I think. And I learned it, and became part of the repertoire. And that got me going. And then there was, you would listen for what's the piano doing? How do I do the piano? And there was a group out of New York. I think they were called Danny and the Juniors, and they had a song called At the Hop. Well, can't play it on this instrument anymore, but that's how it went. And I learned to play that. You were a hit in high school at that moment. And Tequila was around. You could hear it on the radio and you could figure it out. And then you realized there were other people in school, not very many.
Guitar player.
Yeah, exactly. Drummer. And then the next thing you know, and it was always difficult in those days because there were no real piano pieces. Everything was guitar. And one of the hardest keys for a keyboard player to play in is E.
Guitarists love it.
Everything is backwards. It's just backwards. And so that requires a whole new structuring of the head and relationship with the fingers to make it work. You have to concentrate. I can now play very well in the key of E, but in those days, it was terrible. And what you didn't realize in those days also was that what's the purpose of keys? If everything was in the key of C, it would be a boring world.
Yeah.
A boring musical world. So you've got this possibility of other keys. And it makes a difference when you're playing in a band. Don't play it all in the same key.
Yeah.
You have to have variety. And what's interesting, if you read a crowd when you're playing in a nightclub or some situation, I don't think nightclubs exist anymore, the way I understand them as. You could read the crowd, and you knew, to change it up.
Yeah. And there are bright keys, E major, very bright. You're not going to play a sad ballad in E major. The B flat is just so much more grounded.
Yeah.
Still a major key there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, E flat, much nicer. As you were speaking, at so many visions. Anyways, it's really, yeah. Thank you for this.
Hey,
if folks have questions,
thank you for asking.
Yeah, of course. We're doing this again Sunday if Ken's up for it. It's Mother's Day. Maybe more music. Maybe more of this information. Maybe we'll play together. This is so. Yeah, it's so interesting. I was going to say, when you said you were able to listen to the radio, I guess, and pick up on that music, what happened with the accordion, I've been told, is 13-year-old is playing the accordion. It was kind of the instrument that their parents or grandparents played. And then they hear on the radio, Paul Anka, songs that they want to play. Yeah. You're going to pick up the guitar instead. Essentially, it's much easier to play chords. What I want to say is the piano, just like the accordion, just like the piano, we could sing along and play chords. This, don't make it bad Take a sad song and make it better. The same 2 chords, 3 chords that we can play on guitar and strum and sing is available on all these beautiful polyphonic instruments that lets us use both hands. Cool. Ken, any other takeaways that you want to leave people with today?
Well, have fun, which was mentioned earlier. Yeah, have fun, and there was a guy I knew, and he used to go winter camping, and he was a pretty outdoorsy kind of guy, and he was learning how to play tenor saxophone, and he would go winter camping, and if you can imagine going out in the bush somewhere
With a saxophone.
with a saxophone and playing, that's what I would encourage anybody to do. Yeah.
Cool. So take your instrument outside of the usual setting.
And
play.
there's all different kinds of, there's accordion. Accordion's very portable. This is quite portable. It even runs on batteries. I mean, the technology is there. There's no question about it. I recommend this particular brand,
And this is a Casio.
the Casio Privia. I looked at a lot of them, and if I had to take the plunge, which I did, this was the plunge.
And it feels lovely.
It feels not too bad. It is a bit noisy sometimes. If you
hear
really you hear, and that can get in the way a little bit.
Awesome.
No, I really appreciate coming here.
Awesome. Amazing. People are saying thank you. This was so enjoyable. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and musical expertise with us. Experience. Thank you very much. Lots of interesting thoughts and inspiring music to keep me trying. Amazing, Ken.
Yes,
Thank
keep
you.
on.
You're a huge inspiration.
Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on. Amazing, everyone. Thank you. Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
evenings, your afternoons.
Thank you, everybody.
I don't think it's morning anywhere. Anyways.
No.
Thank you. Beautiful.